Is Cody Campbell's plan to pull media rights misguided? Is Smash Capital's plan to pull media rights madness? That's what we're talking about in tonight's episode, the live episode of Couz's Corner. Thank you for joining the show. The SEC and Big Ten put out a white paper the other day talking about how they thought trying to pull media rights for all 138 FBS programs, or whatever the new number is now, 130 plus FBS programs, was misguided. They didn't think it would work. They thought, and I'm paraphrasing, but they thought it was an error in judgment. And you've got some content creators out there saying it's going as far as to say it's absolute madness. And I take exception to that. And I'm going to explain why in this live episode. Thank you for joining the show. In the news this week, after we found out, most of you already know about Cody Campbell's plan to pull media rights, to bring in the federal government and get them basically, in a sense, to oversee all of it and whatnot. And obviously we know it requires the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 to be amended to allow it to be used for college sports. Most of you probably already know all of that. That's at the center of both of these, of this whole argument, really, of Cody Campbell's plan, and then of this plan that we found out or heard more about this week, the plan by a group called Smash Sports, who's owned by Smash Capital, a private investment firm. They met this week with several donors or, board members, even a couple presidents or chancellors from FBS programs, most of them from the Power Four. They were meeting with them to give them a presentation, a proposal of a plan to pool media rights for all 130 plus FBS programs, and why it would work, and why it would not only work, but increase revenue for everybody, and to save college sports in the process, or at least help schools afford to pay for all their programs, save Olympic sports, save women's sports. The same thing Cody Campbell says he's trying to do. Smash Capital also is saying, hey, we can help you do the same thing. Let us invest money into this thing, into all of your schools. And we can, it'll be a rising tide lifts all boats type situation. We can flood every school with more money. Everybody makes more, including the big brands, including the blue bloods, and everybody will be able to better afford revenue sharing, will better afford NIL, better afford new facilities, paying their coaches, all of these things that we're seeing right now. And by the way, you can do it without having to cut your Olympic sports. That's both of these plans, the Smash Capital plan and the Cody Campbell plan. We're going to focus on the Smash Capital plan tonight, because this one's kind of new in the news, and it's been out a couple days, and I haven't really given my thoughts on it, but I've been listening to Greg, the guy I have a lot of respect for, is Greg Flugar. He and I respect each other. We like each other. He's one of the few non-WVU content creators I watch, to be honest with you. And I like his takes on college realignment. I don't always agree with him, but I do like his takes, and I like hearing what he has to say. And I happen to disagree with his takes, some of his takes on this situation. I think he's overlooking a lot of things, and hopefully I can help fill in some gaps that I think he might be overlooking. That's what I'm here to try to do tonight, okay? But when you got the Smash Capital plan, some of the schools represented at this meeting were Penn State, Michigan, USC, LSU. Notice a trend there. Those schools are all from the SEC or Big Ten, right? Clemson, Texas Tech, Louisville, SMU, Boise State, Maryland, and TCU. As a matter of fact, TCU and LSU had their president or chancellor at the meeting. Others had, mega donors or, board members or whatever. But they were all interested in hearing what the people from Smash Capital had to say. And some of them did it knowing that their conference commissioner is not on board with this. We all know, Greg's the Big Ten and SEC put out that white paper a few days ago, basically saying this wouldn't work. Of course, they're going to put out that white paper. They have all the power. They have all the influence. They have most of the money. They have the best TV time slots. Of course, they don't want this to happen. They lose, at least they think they're going to lose their advantages. I don't think they will, and I think that's one of the things people are missing, but I don't want to get ahead of myself here. We're going to hit the highlights. For those of you who may not be aware of this, we're going to hit the highlights of what Smash Capital's proposing, and then I'll give you my go in depth on my thoughts on it. Smash Sports is led by former executives from ESPN and Disney. I know Bob Thompson has come out and said he didn't think this would work. He's former VP at Fox Sports. I get it. I follow him on X. And I know we've heard about who's going to pay for this. But you've got former TV executives who are part of this Smash Capital group. I would say they have a little bit of an idea of how TV rights deals work, what would work, what wouldn't work, how much money it would take to make things work. Greg wants to call it madness. With all due respect, Greg, I think these executives from ESPN and Disney and these people with these private equities are pretty freaking smart people. They're not dumb. They didn't get where they are by being dumb. And they've been working on this for 2 years or more. You don't think they've done their research? You don't think they've talked to people? They're not going to go into this without having a plan, without having an idea of what the numbers are. And another argument, people, they won't share the numbers. You know how long it will take for them to share these numbers and all this information? You know how many slides of a presentation it would probably take? Of course they're not going to share all that. And two, nobody's going to share all the details behind a potential mega deal like this. It's just not normal. Not to the public anyway. And by the way, the Louisiana governor is also on board with the Smash Capital plan. He thinks he actually called it a common sense solution. A governor of a state who has multiple schools in his state who would be impacted by this, including LSU, who's the biggest school in his state, who is in one of the Power 2 conferences. He thinks it's a common sense solution. Now, before I get too far, I want to remind you, please hit the thumbs up button. Help get more people in here. Thanks to Kenny Evans, Jerry Justice, Daniel Gigax, Bob Swanger, Clint Moses, and Browns and Beers for all being in the chat. Lifted Diesel, and thanks to all of the other few of you who are watching. Let's get more people in here. Hit that thumbs up button. Let's do it. All right. In the live show, if you're watching on the replay, thank you as well. You can also hit the like button. Now, I mentioned the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. Either one of these plans, whether it be the Smash Capital plan, the Cody Campbell plan, the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961 allowed sports leagues to combine their media rights together. It's what the NFL uses. It's what most major sports franchises or sports leagues rather use. They're wanting to amend it. A lot of people are wanting to amend it to include college sports and college leagues. Right now, they're not included in it. Those deals have to be done at the conference level or the school level. Now, I understand there would likely be challenges of doing this for 138 schools or whatever the number is, 130 plus schools. I get it. It's a lot. But again, you don't think the folks at these former executives at ESPN and Disney didn't think that through? And speaking of that, have you ever heard of Netflix? You ever heard of Amazon? You ever heard of all of these other streaming services out there? Apple TV, Google? You don't think they would want a piece of the pie? I mean, think about it. Think about this, okay? Right now, you have 10 FBS conferences, right? Most, if not all of them, already have their games on television somewhere, even if it's on ESPN Plus or on a conference network. It's somewhere in the stratosphere on a screen, an electronic screen where you can watch it. Am I right? Even the Mac has games on TV, don't they? It's still the same amount of schools, is it not? So why could you not make it work? And I know some current executives from Fox and ESPN were reached out to, and they spoke saying that they doubted it would work because they didn't think ESPN and Fox would pay double to pull the media rights, because that is exactly, you saw it in the thumbnail, $14 billion deal. That's what Smash Capital is saying. This could be a $14 billion after the 2035, when all these current media deals are up. He thinks the value, or they think the value of pulling all these media rights together would be up to $14 billion with a B to be pumped into college sports. Without it, they're saying it would be about $7 billion, about $6.7 billion. So they're saying it would be double. Now, ESPN and Fox executives apparently don't believe that, because they said they don't think they would be willing to pay double for that. Fox and ESPN are not the only two people, aren't the only two players in the game, folks. Warner Brothers Discovery has sports on theirs. Now they're getting taken over by Paramount. I'm sure Paramount, who owns CBS, I'm sure they could take a few more games. You don't think they'd like to have games for their new Warner Brothers Discovery channels, for TNT and TBS, maybe even True TV? They could even stream it on Paramount Plus. Stream games on Paramount Plus. You don't think Netflix would like to have more college content? You don't think Amazon and Apple and maybe Google would like to have more college content? And that's a great point. Daniel Gigg asks the quality windows. I understand that. Daniel Gigg asks, matter of fact, since that's related to what I'm talking about, let me put it on the screen now. Daniel Gigg asks, thank you for the comment. He's a paid VIP channel member. He says, Bob Thompson, who's a former executive, former VP of Fox Sports, says Bob Thompson talked about quality windows available when even with streaming, it's difficult to get a large amount more. Oh, I get that. But you could still, see, that's the whole thing I think people are missing. SEC and Big Ten could still likely get some of their premium spots, if not all of them, because this is not an equal revenue sharing model. And that's another thing. And I'm kind of bouncing all over the place because I'm passionate about this, if you can't tell. I keep hearing people calling it a redistribution. I turn on Greg's show and I see people putting in the comments, redistribution of wealth. It's not redistribution of anything. It's just increasing everybody's distribution. How is it redistribution? They are saying, I don't want to use the word guarantee because I don't know if they use that word, but they are basically saying, according to our proposal, everybody will make more money, including the blue blood brands. So how in the world is that redistribution if they're going to get more money already? I guess they want it all, right? Is that the problem? They want it all. It's either give us all or it's considered redistribution. Give me a break. You could give them, they even compared it to the CFP. We already see an unequal distribution model with the way they set up the CFP. You could do something similar with this new proposal, potentially, even with the primary TV rights. They could take 50, 60% of it between the two conferences. Now, I don't necessarily love that idea as a fan of a team who wouldn't be included in that, but that's the only way you're going to get them on board with it, even if you can then. Now, they're not going to like the idea of losing their control and their power, I'm sure, because another piece of this is scheduling. They're going to have college sports would basically be governed by a new governing body. And that's another thing, Greg. Who's this governing body? We don't know. It doesn't matter right now. This is just a proposal. Only people it matters to are the people in the room. And I'm sure they know the details, or at least I'm sure they've at least been talked about. Thank you, Lifted Diesel, for the comment, brother. He says, let's go. Like, share, comment, subscribe, and become a paid VIP member. Thanks, brother. I appreciate you. But they want to set up a new governing body to govern college sports. Don't we need that right now? I know Greg Sankey says conferences can govern themselves. Well, Greg, but the way you want to govern and the way the Big Ten wants to govern is to leave everybody else out, holding the bag. And everybody, a lot of these other schools having to drop programs and drop sports because they can't afford to freaking pay for them. Because you are sucking up all the money in your own conference. It irritates me. I understand they have to look out in their own best interest. I get that. But there's a such thing as what's the word I'm looking for here? I don't want to try to misspeak here, but basically there's a scenario where I said it earlier, rising tides lift all boats, right? And it could be the opposite. The SEC and Big Ten could get, if they leave everybody else in the dirt dust so much, or they split away and do their own thing, it could actually hurt the sport overall potentially. People could lose interest. Do they want people losing interest in college sports? They could even have less people tuning into their games. But they don't see that. They're so blinded, they don't see that. That or they don't believe it, one. And I'll get to that in a minute, Ball Swinger, the government piece. I do want to talk about that. I don't think it'll be overall government control. And I'm not a huge fan of government control either. But I think the reason Cody wants, and I talked about this in my interview with WVU President Michael Benson, which, by the way, if you're watching this on the replay, you'll see a link to that in the pinned comment below. Go check it out. It was a very good interview. We talked about this situation a little bit, and he also talked about what West Virginia is doing to try to, improve their value, their brand, and be more competitive in sports, and set themselves up for the future. So please check out that once this is over. But the government piece for Cody Campbell's plan. I don't like government control either, but I think what Cody understands is if we don't if we don't do some kind of legislation and government intervention and force everyone to do this, the SEC and Big Ten will never agree to do it. I think he understands that. That might be why he's trying to go the route he's going. Smash Capital's trying to go a different route and say, hey, we're going to show you that you can make so much more money that you're going to want to do it. I don't know that that's going to work with the SEC and the Big Ten. It may not even work with others as well. But we do know there are apparently individual schools in every Power 4 league who seem to like this idea. But another thing this Smash Capital plan calls for is optimizing football schedules for better and more non-conference games. They want to. That's one way you increase the value and make it worthwhile. Put more quality non-conference games on TV. Stop playing the FCS schools and so many P4 versus G5 and all that, unless it's a rivalry game. Put more rivalry games on. It increases the value for everybody, including the viewer and the networks and the streaming services, everybody, the advertisers. You get more rivalry games. I know in Cody's plan, he even talked about regionalizing things more. I think fans would love that. And I know, again, everybody's going to say, well, the conferences can do that on their own, but that's not what they're doing. They're doing the complete opposite. They're absolutely screwing it all up. They have screwed it. West Virginia had to go to the Big 12 a decade ago just to survive, over a decade ago now, just to survive. Travel halfway across the country. Now you have USC traveling to freaking Rutgers. It makes no sense. None of this makes any sense. And you've heard even Ohio State's president say it's not sustainable. And he's in one of the schools that'll probably be okay at the end of the day. And even he says it's not sustainable. But that's okay. Let's not have any conversations about fixing it. Let's not be open-minded about anything. And it doesn't mean we have to adhere to Cody's plan or even have to adhere to the Smash Capital plan, but can we at least have a conversation about it? Can we at least be open-minded and give it maybe you combine these two ideas somehow. Or maybe you think of another idea that's similar. But at the end of the day, I think pooling the media rights is going to be a necessity to make any of this work. Now, and one thing that people don't like the idea of private capital, private equity, and I don't love it either. But again, it might be the only solution. Somebody's got to interject money into this thing, and here's their plan. They're saying, "Hey, once they're saying they can do this without even blowing up the current media rights deals. If we agree to this, if the conferences and schools agree to this, if this happens, if they agree to pull the media rights, or they're forced to pull the media rights, however that ends up working out, they know there's going to be a period between the time the current media deals run out until the new one starts. They're willing to pay every school money to keep them. I don't want to say keep them afloat, but keep them from going backwards, I guess would be the best way to put it, until the deal gets done. They're going to take care of them. Billions in private capital cash to make sure it works. Now, they're going to want a piece of the pie, and that's how they're going to recoup their money. They're probably going to want a percentage of all the new revenue that they bring in. That's where they make their money. They are a private capital firm. They are a business. They're in it for profit. And that's another thing. They're not going to want to lose money. So they're going to want to make sure this works. So you're going to have a partner who's going to help you make sure it works. Because if it doesn't, everybody loses, including them. And I think we're kind of in desperate times here, and something like this might be what it takes to fix this mess, to fix this chaos we call college sports. Timmy Mead, it's a great question. He says, to get more money, if Blue Bloods get more, also, does it really level the playing field? Not saying I'm for or against, just trying to figure out. I have a hard time. That is one area that I think I might agree with Greg and others on. I don't think it's necessarily going to level the playing field. It might level it a little bit more than what it is today. And maybe that's why the SEC and Big Ten are concerned. Maybe they don't want it to be leveled more, but I don't you're never going to be able to level it completely. Let's face it, it's never been totally level. There are certain schools that have always had more resources, have always had more money, have always had more and bigger donors. That's always existed. It always will. I'm not sure we ever get away from that. But in the NIL and transfer portal era, it's gotten I think the gap has gotten even larger. And that's one of the things, and maybe everybody makes more money. Everybody's able to hold on to their Olympic sports. Everybody's able to fund their rev share. Everybody's able to compete. But, and the SEC and Big Ten still make more than everybody else, but maybe they don't make quite as much more than everybody else. Maybe that's the deal. But yes, there's always going to be, but because this was an unequal revenue sharing thing, there would not be a totally level playing field, even in this scenario. Which is another reason I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around why all these Big Ten people are so mad about this. Why are these Big Ten people so mad that I see on Greg's show and Big 12 Mafia show and others? Why are they so mad about this? You're not losing your advantage. You're not redistributing wealth. You're gaining more wealth potentially. Why do you have an issue with West Virginia gaining more wealth, even if you do too? And here's another thing. People calling Cody Campbell a communist. Guys, college sports is not a Fortune 500 company. Yes, it's a business now, but it's a not-for-profit business. All the money made goes right back into the athletic department to stay competitive. It's not a for-profit business. So you can interject a little bit of quote unquote socialism here, a little bit of government intervention if you need to level the playing. These are public institutions who rely on state government money, sometimes even federal government money when you're talking about the education side, but at least from the athletic side, sometimes state money. They need to be competitive for the benefit of their own states, for crying out loud, as much as possible anyway. So they're already government funded in most cases, in at least in to some degree. But so why do you care all of a sudden that the government's going to be intervening when they already are? I mean, give me a freaking break. I Thanks, brother. Thanks, Bob. Thanks for stopping in, man. I just don't understand. Uh, I don't understand why they call it redistribution of wealth and socialism and all that. Because that college, you can stop comparing college sports to a Fortune 500 company, a company that's on the New York Stock Exchange. That is not what this is. The NFL is a corporation, and they do it. They pull media rights. They make sure everybody's competitive. But you want to call Cody Campbell a communist? Are you calling it is? And I know the difference is the NFL is collectively bargained. I get that. I'm not stupid. But to sit here and say it's communism is just not accurate, in my opinion. Now, Daniel Gigax, you're exactly right. Without some schools not wanting to join, it will hurt the bargaining process of the deal. That's right. That's why this will likely never happen. The SEC and Big Ten will likely never get on board. If anything else, it actually may push them further toward breaking away and doing their own thing, unfortunately. I wish they would just sit down at the table with everybody and try to come up with something different. If you don't want to pull the media rights, at least, I don't know, man, figure something out. I don't know. I get so frustrated with all these all this hyperbole being thrown around, calling him a communist, and because the guy's a billionaire, people are pissed off at him. Let's call it what it is. Everybody's going to assume because he's a billionaire that he's a crook or he's dishonest or not genuine because he's rich. And maybe you're right, and maybe he is disingenuous, or maybe he is not sincere in his intent, and even if he's not even if his goal is to help Texas Tech, if the result is saving scholarships for Olympic athletes, we've still accomplished something positive. I don't care what his intent is. If the end goal is positive for everyone, then way to go, Cody Campbell, or Smash Capital, or whoever, right? I just wish people. I don't see how. What am I? Maybe I'm missing something. I don't know everything. How do you see this? Maybe you see it differently. How do you see this as a redistribution of wealth when it's a new? I look at it as a new distribution of wealth, where everybody's getting more a higher distribution. It's not that the Ohio State's got to share their money with. I mean, they are sharing it with them. I get that, but they're still wealthy. Well, Ohio State's still going to be wealthier than West Virginia. See what I'm saying? So I don't know what the big deal is. And I don't understand why people don't. And look, I'm biased. I get it. I'm a West Virginia fan, okay? But I also would argue that people like Greg Pflugar and Mullen over at Big 12 Mafia, they're biased. They're Big 10 guys. So they're coming at this through a Big 12 lens. And they can say they don't, and maybe their intentions are not to, but it's hard not to because we're human, right? So I'll admit right now, I'm a little biased to this because I want West Virginia to be solvent. I want them to compete. I want them to survive. Okay, so I'm open and honest about that. But I would also love to see college athletes be able to keep their scholarships. I hate hearing stories about these schools dropping programs. I don't, you know, whatever school it is, it's already happening across the country. So if that is the end result of all this, then it's a good thing. for everybody. Now, this all hinges on there's one big, I'll call it a big question mark, big asterisk behind all this, and that's the NFL. Because there are some reports out there that the NFL is trying to renegotiate their next media deal early and that it could be absolutely massive, a massive deal. And that if ESPN and Fox and others might be paying out a lot more money for the NFL than they ever have in the past, which means there could be less money to go around for college sports. If that's the case, I don't think any of this is even going to matter, to be honest with you. You can pull media rights all day long. If there's money's not there to do it, it ain't going to make a difference. So, depending on what happens with this NFL deal, and I think this whole Paramount takeover of Warner Brothers Discovery could also play a role here. How much are they willing to spend for live sports rights? All of that's going to matter too. But if the NFL sucks all the money out of the system, this is all a moot point at the end of the day, because you're not going to be able to. I don't see how you're going to increase, even though there are bigger other players besides ESPN and Fox and CBS. You need them to be at the table, right? You at least need them at the table. And I think the idea here from Smash Capital is, okay, if we get Netflix and Amazon and Google and Apple at the table who are willing to spend big money, then ESPN and Fox are not going to have a choice if they want to keep these sports on their televisions, on their networks. They're not going to have a choice but to up their ante and offer more. But if they spend all that money on the NFL, you know what they might do? They might say, you know what? I'm out. College sports doesn't matter that much to me. And if you're going to force me to buy MAC games in addition to my SEC games, I'm out. I'm happy with the NFL. And I'll go over here and find me another live sport, Major League Baseball or NBA or UFC or something, and I'll get that instead. That's one of my fears. This could all be for naught, and we could all these conferences could all end up making less money on their next TV deal instead of more. That is a concern I have too. And we could also have all of our games on streaming next time instead of getting to watch them on network and or cable TV. All right, let me jump over here to the comments section. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover. I got through my little rant here. Yep, I think I got through everything I wanted to say for the most part. I might have left something out, but I think you get my point. Cody Campbell's not a communist because he wants to help lift all tides and save Olympic sports. And he's not a communist because he wants to help out his school either. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay? And if the end result ends up being saving some sports programs across the country, then even better. Even better. All right. Let's go ahead and see what you guys got to say in the comments. Was expecting a bigger crowd for this one tonight. Not sure. Is there somebody else with a show on or something right now that I'm not aware of? Anyway, Browns and Beers says, great interview with President Benson. Thank you, Browns and Beers. I appreciate it. Clint Moses in the house. Kenny Evans says, is WV in financial trouble? Possibly. Dr. Benson was pretty optimistic about things. I mean, there are a lot of things in the works. From a sports perspective and an academics perspective, I really love Dr. Benson. Man, he's aggressive. He is aggressive in trying to improve West Virginia's status, not only athletically but also academically, because as he and I discussed, those things do tie in together. They're interconnected. Whether you out there watching me, believe it or not, you heard it directly from the mouth of a school president. Academics matter in realignment. It matters. And Dr. Benson's written a book about AAU, about Gilman, who was one of the founders of AAU. I think his name was Daniel Gilman, who was one of the founders of AAU. President Benson wrote a book about him at one point. He's well-versed and well-read on AAU, what it means, how important it is for universities. And he has a goal and we talked about this. He has a goal, a stretch goal. He called it a moonshot to get little old West Virginia, one of the lowest ranked teams in all of Power Four, maybe the lowest ranked teams in all of Power Four, into the AAU, lowest ranked academically, into the AAU. That's his goal. And it's a lot. Again, he admitted it's a moonshot. It's going to be difficult. But he says if USF can do it, then West Virginia can do it. Because at one time, those two schools were in the same conference, and nobody ever dreamed USF would be a AAU institution. And now they are. So that's his goal. And along with that, as you're improving West Virginia's academic status, and you're also hopefully becoming more competitive on the playing field, when 2030, 2031 hits, or whenever the next iteration of realignment happens, West Virginia, he's hoping that West Virginia will be sitting in a better position than they are today. If there is a P2 breakaway, maybe West Virginia can be a part of that. That's what he's trying to accomplish. Ren Becker on the athletic side, him on the academic side, and they're marrying all that together for the benefit of the university. And I think it's a noble thing to do. I love it. But to say that I think they could be Kenny Evans. I'd be naive if I didn't say I'm concerned about it. But I am optimistic that they're heading in the right direction. I just hope it's not too little too late, if that makes sense. Jerry Justice says, as I figured it correctly, each 138 programs will get $101,450,000. Yes, I guess that's correct, but I mean, that would be your average, I guess. But it would be unequal revenue, and I'm sure not all of that money would go directly to the schools. Some of it would probably go to the conferences, offices. But yes, because I think they still want the conferences to be involved. And that's another thing. They want the conferences to be involved in this. It's not like they're just kicking the conferences to the curb. They actually want the conferences. I had this wrote down here somewhere. Allow the conferences to determine the distribution formula. They're going to let the conferences make that decision, which conference gets the most money. So conferences aren't dying necessarily. They're just going to have all their media rights pulled together. The conferences can stay like they are, but even if you want them to. And that's another thing people don't understand. Now, in Cody's plan, the conferences might change a little bit. But in this Smash Capital plan, that's not necessarily the case, at least the way I interpret it. The SEC can still have the same teams in that conference. Now, they might not be able to play the School of the Poor or the School of the Deaf and Blind the week before they play their biggest rival anymore. They might have to play, Ohio State might have to play Texas, or Alabama might have to play Arizona State, or Alabama might have, let's think of something better. I don't know. You just name it. Virginia Tech might have to play West Virginia. Whatever. You get my point. More rivalry games in non-conference, in addition to the conference games. So it's not like the conferences have to disappear and go away. And, which brings up something. I actually meant to mention this. Brett Yormark. He does not like this at all. Listen to what Brett Yormark had to say about this. He says this is his own personal thoughts, and he was clear that he does not speak for the conference because I would imagine there are schools in the Big 12 who probably want this to happen, if not all of them. But here's what Brett Yormark had to say. While I encourage collaboration and efforts to find solutions to challenges facing our industry, I take exception to the fact that Smash Capital, providing no novel concepts, is preying on the current vulnerabilities of many of our institutions, with the primary goal of generating a significant double-digit return. If key stakeholders determine third-party resources are needed, I will recommend we engage with the right thought leaders and the most established financial institutions, a group Smash Capital is not part of, end quote. Now, obviously Brett Yormark is not a fan of Smash Capital, but we need to put this in context and perspective here. Who was it just a few months ago we saw reports that the Big 12 was having conversations with? Remember that? Redbird Capital. Redbird Capital is also a private equity firm who probably competes with who? Smash Capital. So Brett Yormark has his own self-interest here in mind a little bit, I think. And again, I'm not faulting him for that, but he wants to do a deal with Redbird Capital. So of course he's going to come out and speak against Smash Capital, because if he doesn't, it could kill the deal he wants to do with Redbird. So, and the fact that he says they're preying on the current vulnerabilities of many of our institutions with the primary goal of generating a significant double-digit return. What is Redbird Capital trying to do? I don't. Now, look, I obviously wasn't in the room for those conversations, but you think Redbird Capital is going to do this for free? Give me a break, Brett. Come on now. Come on now. So I was not a huge fan of what Brett Yormark had to say there. I think this is a situation he probably should have just chose not to comment at all. Because, and again, he was clear that he wasn't speaking for the conference there, but don't think he should have said that. Just my opinion. But anyway, Brett's a pretty bold guy, and he says what's on his mind. So, all right, let's some more comments. Kenny Evans says, "Do you see sharks investing and or major companies only investing?" Probably both, to be honest with you. It's going to take an all hands on deck approach. Browns and Beers makes a great point. He says the Louisiana governor also intervened in LSU's coaching search. Yes, he did. So, I'm not sitting here saying that whatever the Louisiana governor has to say needs to be taken as the gospel. That guy likes to interfere and intervene in things he probably shouldn't. So take that for what it's worth. But, he is a governor of a state in the SEC, and I think that's noteworthy. Daniel Gigak says problem is the number of big money universities that are no to a super league makes it non-viable. Fuzzy Ball says ACC. Ooh, I shouldn't have said that. You got me. You got me, Fuzzy. Fuzzy says ACC has a much better tie-in than Big 12 with ESPN. SEC and ACC are included in all the ESPN packages. Not sure that the Big 12 isn't in the worst position of the Power 4 if they go to a Super League. Not sure that the Big 12 isn't in the worst position of the Power 4 if they go to a Super League. I guess it depends on how that Super League. Yeah, if the conferences stay intact like they are today, and Florida State, Clemson stay in the ACC, Miami, then yes, you're probably right. That's actually that is not an unfair statement, Fuzzy. And I'm not saying the rest of your name, man. Y'all people with these troll names, man, you're gonna get us YouTubers in trouble. He says, I'm sure that they would want Texas Tech and BYU. Who else in the Big 12 could afford it? I'm not sure who you're referring to. I must have missed another comment up here. Bob says neither Smash or Cody will tell how their plans work totally. I'm sure they're telling that in the meeting room. They're just not telling us. But that is a fair criticism, but I just don't see why it's that relevant, to be honest. One thing all those companies have in common, they're all owned by liberals. LOL. Maybe so, man. Maybe so. But they know how to make money, right? And it doesn't mean those individuals are liberal. And again, I don't really. At the end of the day, I just want West Virginia, and I don't want college football and college sports ruined because Ohio State and Texas. Let's just say the Big Ten and Big I can't talk. Big Ten and SEC are getting all the money. I don't want that to ruin college sports. And I want my school that I root for to be in a better position. I am doing my video right now in a hotel room, and one of the cool things about having a Mac is it allows you to set up a background. And I downloaded this photo from when I was touring the Pushkar Center, and I blew it up and used it as a background. And I kind of like it. I kind of dig it. So anytime I'm recording and I'm not in my regular studio, not in my regular recording spot, I will probably use this background quite a bit. But I'll thank you for the compliment, brother. But yeah, I'm in a hotel room at the moment, traveling for work. Yep, it's a background, and yep, there you go. You answered your own question, didn't you? Baron of Beef Dip is in the house. Timmy Mead's in the house. It says to get more money, if blue bloods get more also, does it really level the playing field? I already talked about that one. Uncle Lou, I was going to react to Uncle Lou's video, Jay Villain, but I was trying to figure out, and I might still, I was trying to figure out how to, uh, I may do that. I may do that. I got to figure out how to put my thoughts around it, if that makes sense. I don't want to just get on there and ramble like I'm kind of doing right now, really, to be honest. Kenny Evans says, do you see schools selling stock in schools? Man, I hope not. I'm not sure state governments would like that too much. Private schools could probably do that, maybe, but public institutions, I guess what you could do, Kenny, is you can set up an entity inside your school or inside your athletic department, like West Virginia has done, like many schools have done, like a for-profit or a nonprofit business inside your athletic department, and potentially sell stakes of that, maybe. I don't know. And even then, if it's a part of the institution, is it still legally part of the state? I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of the legal ins and outs of that. But I know conferences have looked at that. They've looked at setting up. The Big Ten looked at that with their equity deal with the CU Investment Group. They were going to set up Big Ten Enterprises, which would be a for-profit entity, and then they were going to sell off a share of Big Ten Enterprises to CU Investment Group. That's how they're going to generate some of their money. So, but can it be done at a school level? I honestly don't know the answer to that question. And it's probably different in every state, to be honest with you, which is another reason that's another reason we need some federal legislation on some of this stuff. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a government takeover, but we do have to have some federal legislation to codify all these rules so that every school is playing by the same rules, because you've got different states with different laws and different rules, and nobody's playing by the same set of rules here. See. Don't get mad when you're told who's on your schedule and you have no choice. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that part of it, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, I mean, as fans, we're kind of like that now, are we not? From a fan perspective, I got forced to watch West Virginia stop playing my rivals or our rivals and start playing teams from the other side of the country. And I was basically told I had to like it. And in a way, West Virginia was done that way too, because it was either moved to the Big 12 or be stuck. I shouldn't use the word stuck. It sounds disrespectful to the G5 schools, but in a sense, it's the truth. They would be left in a G5 conference. So they were forced to play schools that they probably didn't really want to play at the time. And I'm not being disrespectful, but from a geographic standpoint, at that time in history, West Virginia was an outlier in the Power Four, or at that time the BCS. They were an outlier. They were the only team having to travel multiple time zones for the most part to play their conference opponents. And they were forced to do that because of what happened to the Big East. So they've kind of already went through this to a degree. But, Bob, I do understand your frustration there. But, man, if they're going to base it on rivalries, why do we care? Most rivalries are regional. It should be great. I think it'll be better for TV and better for the fans. So I don't really have an issue with that, to be honest. I'll be honest with you, man. The conferences have kind of screwed this thing up. I don't think what the conferences are doing is the greatest thing for the sport. Maybe somebody else does need to step in and make those decisions. T-Jinx048, who's a channel member, says something like this needs done. I just know that all of American sports seem to be losing their appeal to me, but something like this could at least slow down the downward spiral, in my opinion. I think a lot of fans feel that way. Ears fans in the house says pull the meteorites and pay teams directly based on the viewership they generate rather than paying conferences. Top brands still make top dollar. Rising programs got a bump. Maybe that would work. But then how do you determine who gets in the playoff? And I don't know. Do you just take the top 16 ranked teams? I don't know. That's an idea, Ears fan. I like it. You're thinking outside the box, man. And that's what we need. We need more people. We need regular Joes like us to make these decisions, man. We can make these decisions. We're smart as we're probably as smart as some of these people in these boardrooms. The other gig X says, remember Michigan and Iowa, along with Georgia, Mississippi State, all make the same in conference payments. Yep. Fuzzy says ACC schools were paid out an average of $45 million per school in 24-25 year. I think the Big Ten is pretty close to that as well. I mean Big 12. Sorry. Uh, Lower schools may lose all sports if something isn't done. Some schools are already moving from D1 to D3. It hamstrings the Big 12 not having a bigger tie to ESPN. The conference gets the least amount of coverage of the power conferences. Absolutely. That's why I would like to see the Big 12 do a deal with Warner Brothers Discovery. Again, now that Paramount owns them, I don't know where that would go. Warner Brothers Discovery, I don't know how many games you guys watched. TNT does a fantastic job with their coverage of Big 12 sports. Fantastic job. I want to see more of it. We see Big 12 basketball on CBS now, so a few games a year. So I would love to see the Big 12 be able to get away from ESPN and kind of have I'd like to have a network that's willing to invest more into the Big 12. And I think that's what Brett Yormark's trying to do in this next TV negotiation. He wants to separate the basketball and football and try to get better deals for each one to make more money overall. And he can sell off each one separately and potentially make more money that way. And, maybe get somebody who's going to show the Big 12 the love they deserve. If West Virginia gets AAU, do you see them trying to get in the Big 10? They're going to try to get in whichever Power 2 conference they can, whether it be the Big 10 or the SEC one. I think any school right now in the ACC and the Big 12 are probably trying to get out and get into one of the other ones. I mean, that's just the world we live in right now. So I'm sure they would try to if they got AAU. But again, it took USF from the time their president made the statement they wanted to be AAU. It took them 15 years to get there. So, this is going to be if West Virginia is able to achieve it, it's going to be a long process. And the next iteration of realignment will probably happen before they were able to achieve it anyways. But who knows? Maybe not. Daniel says AAU is difficult where there isn't a standard to get in. It's if the other schools like you. Yeah, there actually is I know what you mean, and yes, it is a lot. There's some politics involved, but like President Benson described it as, like marriage. You got to be asked first, right? You have to make yourself attractive enough that somebody asks you. But there are a list of things that you have to meet to get consideration. And one of the things they're doing right now is going down that list and looking at the things, what have we already done and what do we need to do next? Where do we need to improve? And how do we stack up with some of these other schools who are peers to us and similar in a lot of their criteria or similar in like enrollment, population, things like that, student population, those types of things. We'll say USC only plays at Rutgers once every 4 years in football, one once every other year in basketball. Fair enough. Still sucks to have to do that, and it makes no sense. Carla Jenkins in the house. Thank you for joining the show. Joe Zay is in the house. Thank you, Joe. Barron says he would rather see the W go to the ACC to bring back the rivalry games. They would be sold out every game. We have no big rival in the Big 12. I would love to have the rivalries back, but man, the ACC right now, unless something like this happens with the pulling of media rights, I'm not sure the ACC is going to survive because of, you have North Carolina's likely going to leave. Miami's probably going to leave. We already know that Florida State and Clemson want to get out. I think, Louisville, I've heard rumors that, I shouldn't say we've heard rumors that they might try to get out. So, I mean, I just – ACC seems like a ticking time bomb to me a little bit. Financially, they're just as in good a shape as the Big 12, if not slightly better right now. But they're just not stable. And now that they have this unequal revenue sharing thing, it's going to cause teams from the middle down to lose money or go backwards, rather, and start making less money than the Big 12 schools. I just think unequal revenue sharing from a conference level is a death knell. But we'll see. we ever get to interview Rich Rod, man, I would love to, but it's probably not in the cards. Maybe one of these days, but I've requested to interview him, but uh, so far I have not been successful. Timothy Green's in the house. He says, please, everyone, hit that like, share, subscribe, and comment. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Timothy Green. I appreciate your long-time support, brother. Steve Ohio, Florida's in the house. Says, media has changed since the last media deal. Streaming isn't where it was projected as yet. Linear still draws most viewers. NFL will eat first. Interesting to see what's left for college sports. Absolutely. Great comment, Steve Ohio, Florida. Appreciate you joining the show, brother. I got a super chat. Let's get to this super chat from Carla Jenkins. Thank you, Carla Jenkins. Carla says, Paramount has CBS and TNT. Could be good partnership for the Big 12. Yes, absolutely could be. Brett Yormark seems to be carving out a pretty good relationship with, based on the fact he got the basketball deal with CBS. You've got the football sub rights deal with TNT or WBD, which is now Paramount. So, yeah, I think he's carving out relationships with those entities. Hopefully the Big 12 has performed well for them, and we will see more games on those networks going forward. So thank you for the comment, Carla. I really appreciate it. And Curtis adds on to that, saying Big 12 should try to get a deal with Paramount Plus. I agree. I'd be okay with that. Brother, I would love to have Brett and or Rich Rod on my show. It would be an honor to interview those guys. I've had Ren on, and I've now had President Benson on. I've never had a coach on, don't think. But maybe one of these days, man. Those are hard gets. They have a tendency to go on shows, A, that are credentialed media, and B, they like to go on national shows more so than local shows because they want to get their brand out and their name out to more people, meaning talking specifically about Rich Rod. At least, and I'm basing that on optics. Like almost every podcast I've seen Rich Rod on except one has been a national show. The only West Virginia podcast I've seen him on was the Three Guys Before the Game podcast. I think he went on that one. Yeah, I think he did anyway. I saw him on one. But all the rest, I think, were national shows because he wants to get the West Virginia name out, right, and get West Virginia more attention. Devil Dog in the house says, how's it going, Mountaineers? I watched the interview you did with to be President. Awesome, and I think he is setting us up for success and expanding. All right. Well, I'm going to jump off of here. One more comment here from Daniel Gigax. He says, I miss playing Virginia Tech every year. That was a fun game for people in Southern West Virginia. Amen, brother. And Blacksburg is an hour drive from me. The last game I went to was a lot of fun, especially since we won. I got the ribbon in their face. But that is a rivalry that I think is so underrated in college football. Southern West Virginia fans have just as much hate for Virginia Tech as they do Pitt, if not more, because we have so many Virginia Tech fans in our area. And it's a great rivalry. I miss it. I would love to play Virginia Tech and Pitt every single year. And it's a shame that doesn't happen anymore. So, therefore, whatever happens in the future of college sports, I hope West Virginia gets in a league with at least one, if not both of those teams, because life would be so much better if that were the case. All right. That's it for me tonight. Thank you all for hopping on here. Please hit the thumbs up button. Please drop a comment below. Again, remember, I'm pinning the comment below to my interview with WV President Benson. Please enjoy that after this show's over. And Jay Villain is cool. Says Rich has been on Pat McAfee and Pac-Man. Yes, but I consider those national shows because they have a much wider national audience. But good point. Great point. Rich Rod may come on after President interview. Maybe. I'll give it another shot. And or maybe I start with an assistant coach interview and work my way up. We'll see. But nonetheless, thank you all for thanks, Raven. I appreciate it. Thank you all for hopping on the show tonight. God bless you all. Oh, I forgot to say this. I was going to open with this. Rest in power, Lou Holtz. The late great Lou Holtz passed away today at the age of 89. one of the greatest college football coaches of all time, one of the greatest. Man, I have so many great memories of staying up late on Saturdays watching Lou Holtz and Mark May on late night on ESPN. The helmet stickers, all the great segments he did. He was so funny. Even I've listened to some of his speeches on YouTube since. The newspaper trick. If you haven't seen the Lou Holtz newspaper trick, go check it out on I'm sure it's on YouTube or TikTok or somewhere. Go check it out. West Virginia fans, he was born in the state of West Virginia in Follinsby, West Virginia. So he does have ties to the state. And from a football standpoint, obviously he was the coach at Notre Dame when they won their last national title. They won the Fiesta Bowl. The team they beat in that Fiesta Bowl was none other than WVU. It was the year they had Major Harris at quarterback. West Virginia was undefeated that year. They played an undefeated Notre Dame team, and unfortunately, Major Harris gets hurt early in the game. And, not sure how that impacted the outcome, but I'm sure it didn't help. But nonetheless, Notre Dame defeats West Virginia to win their last national championship under coach Lou Holtz. So rest in peace, rest in power, Lou Holtz. Prayers out for the Holtz family, and college football has lost an icon and one of the greats in both the broadcasting world and the coaching world. So anyway, God bless the Lou Holtz family. And Raven, got to give a shout out to the women's team. She says women play in the Big 12 conference this week. Absolutely. West Virginia women going in as the number 2 seed. They were a three-pointer at the buzzer by TCU away from being the number one, winning the Big 12 tournament regular season championship and being the number 1 seed in the tournament. But they are the number 2 seed at least. So hopefully they can win the Big 12 title or the Big 12 tournament this year and get a top 4 seed in March Madness and host a regional game in Morgantown. That would be sweet. So anyway, all right. Thanks all for hopping in the live show. Thank you for those of you who are watching on the playback. I really appreciate your support. God bless you all. And as always, cue Country Roads.